there, friend. What would you like to know? Old as teeth, friend. Old as teeth. Everything we know comes from Founder Ford. That title don't come from nowhere. He was there at the start. When the world ended, about 120 years ago, give or take a decade, Ford and some survivors took shelter in old Ward 13 over there. I don't know how many wards there were, but they were all part of something called the Dreamer Project that went bad. Real bad. There are rumors. Some say he made a deal with the Root, and that's why he's so hell-bent on stopping them. Some say he was experimented on in the Dreamer Project. Some say he found some kind of magic out there in the years when he was traveling the worlds. Truth is, nobody knows. Maybe not even Ford himself. Personally, I think Ford's just tough as dirt and refuses to die. Ford and Clementine are the only ones what really know, and they don't like to talk about it. But old Reggie's got a gift for collecting stories, and I've gleaned a few things. At the wards, see, they connected people to machines that made them dream about other worlds. But these worlds were real, and the dreamers were seeing through the eyes of someone that lived there. Sounds like a bridge too far, don't it? It did for me too. At least until I met Clementine. The story's pretty long, friend. Let me know if you get tired of the telling. After the world fell, see, Founder Ford carried the whole burden of what happened on his shoulders. Tell the truth, I don't think he ever put that burden down. But let's see, where were we? Ah, yes. Founder Ford carried a heavy burden in those earlier days. Probably still does. But what could he do? At first, nothing. He pressed on with the work of helping others survive. If you ask me, that was the best thing he could have done. It never should have stopped. Maybe he wouldn't have if Evelyn hadn't... see, Evelyn was his wife, and she was something special. She could, hear the Root, see what they saw. At first, she thought she was going insane. But then she started using it, spying on the deadwood. And she saw something coming. Something big. She saw a monster, something the ward, the whole city couldn't handle. And only one way out. She communed with the Root, I guess you'd call it. Melded her mind to theirs and drove the monster off. But the Root swallowed her, body and mind, until there was nothing left of Evelyn Ford. Her husband lost it then. He left the ward for months, sometimes years at a time, wandering the worlds trying to find something, anything that could stop the Root. And one day, he just didn't come back. Well, now, my story's not through yet. The Fords, they had a daughter, Nadine. She was maybe 17 when her mother disappeared. Too young to run the ward, but when her pa was gone, folks would ask her their questions instead. Then one day, she was just in charge of everything. Nadine had her own daughter, Ellen, who really made us who we are today. Commander Ellen Ford inherited her mother's pragmatism, her grandfather's doggedness, and her grandmother's willingness to make hard choices. So whenever someone showed up, dehydrated, starving, half mad from loss, she took them in, taught them a trade in medicine and supplies, gave them a family. So you were paying attention. I owe a lot to Ellen Ford, and we all do. And I miss her something fierce, let me tell you. She was one of the dreamers, if you can believe it. The only one still alive, as far as I can tell. She says she got sucked out somehow, dragged into her dream world before the Root came to Earth. I don't understand it much. I reckon she don't either. But she found herself in a place called Riesel, A world covered in snow and inhabited by giant intelligent rats. Don't know how she survived, but I imagine it has to do with those powers of hers. Hey, that's the story I still haven't gotten out of her. Sure is, but power like that don't come without a cost. I can only imagine what it must take out of her to control a power like that. Oh, about 20-odd years ago, we had almost nothing left. Trapped in Ward 13 with nowhere to go and the route getting worse all around us. Then this stranger wanders in out of the storm, makes friends, picks up some gear, and damned if they don't take the fight to the route. I still don't know if that wanderer was crazy or brave or both, but they did it. They beat the route, and things got better day by day. Once it seemed safe to live outside again, Commander Ford made plans to build this town here. The Wanderer was on a mission from the start. Said something about getting to the tower on the old atoll out there. Sounded crazy the first time I heard it, but turns out that tower was one of the old wards. The Wanderer's path wasn't easy, though. Our Wanderer had to track down Founder Ford just to find a way in, and that meant following his trail. Just you wait, I'm getting to that. Well, Ford, it seemed, had gotten himself mixed up in another world's affairs, helping a rebellion out here, and he was imprisoned for it. Now, no one here knew that, but the Root Mother knew, and that's who our Wanderer left to see. The Root Mother's got a story all her own, and I don't know half of it. Before she was the Root Mother, she was Evelyn Ford. That's right, the Founder's wife. Bound herself to the root, she did, and it changed her. Turned her into something else. But when the Wanderer showed up, she pulled herself out. The Root Mother, or whatever she called herself after that, sent our Wanderer down a trail of sorrow, at the end of which was the Founder himself. The Wanderer freed him, and used his knowledge to get into the tower, and destroy the last Dreamer. Or what we thought was the last Dreamer anyway. It did weaken the Root for a time, but I guess that weren't the whole story. So, the Dreamer was dead, the storm subsided, but the Root, they were still around. Then Founder Ford tells us about the oldest ward, the first one, where the Dreamer Project began. He hoped there might be some clue there as to why the Deadwood was still coming to our world. So our Wanderer goes a-hunting. Oh, they found more than even old Ford bargained for. You ain't wrong. Place was full of doors, and I'm not talking about the quiet humankind. One of these doors led to the world of Reesum, where the Wanderer found Clementine. Clementine opened a door what nobody else could have opened. And inside? I hate to admit it, but I don't know what they found inside. All I know is the Root stopped coming when the Wanderer and Clementine were through. They'd done it. Saved the whole damn world. Just making sense of things. Stories make us who we are. If we don't share them, don't learn from them, we're just bouncing around in the dark. She was a force, that woman. Founder Ford came back once. Did I mention that? Almost 60 years ago, right after his daughter Ellen's mother passed away. Ellen couldn't have been more than 18 at the time, but she told him the war didn't need him. Didn't have room for some legend who was just as likely to leave as to lead. I reckon Founder Ford saw the wisdom of that, because a while later, he left again and didn't return for a long time. When he finally did, he wasn't leading us no more. He was content to leave the ward in better hands. Ellen's hands. Well, she fell sick some time ago. Most of us have lost folks without any chance to say goodbye. But we got that with Ellen. Why, she even made things right with her grandfather before the end, or so I hear. The two of them together put Bo in charge of the ward. No one was more surprised about that than Bo. But you know what? He's the right man for the job. Ain't no one loves the ward, loves these people more than the kid who was raised by him. He's gonna do all right. What's on your mind, traveler?